Welcome to In the Balance, the Iowa Judicial Branch podcast. Welcome to In the Balance, a podcast dedicated to exploring Iowa judicial system. I'm your host, Abhash Shrestha. In this episode, we'll learn more about the adoption process in Iowa, a truly joyous occasion for all parties involved. To help us understand the adoption process in detail, we're joined by Judge Brent Pattison, who has overseen numerous adoption cases in his courtroom over the years. Let's hear from the judge himself and get informed about adoption in Iowa. Welcome to In the Balance, Judge Pattison.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for agreeing to do podcast. And this is a very interesting topic of conversation and probably hits home for a lot of people who have thought about adoption or might have adopted or at least gone through the process. So we just wanted to get a little bit insight from the judge's perspective. Like, as a judge who has overseen adoption for so many years, what are your thoughts on the adoption process as a whole?
Well, many judges say that there are only a couple things that we do in our work that are always about, as you said, joy and love. And that's weddings and adoptions, right? Those are really happy occasions where we're creating new legal relationships, right? An adoption proceeding creates a parent-child relationship in the same way as if the child had been born to that parent. And lawyers, judges enjoy being part of them. I think families really enjoy being present to support the petitioners, to be a part of the ceremony, and to welcome new children to a family.
Hmm. And how does the court determine like the best interest of a child in the adoption cases?
The court assesses the best interest of the child in many ways in adoption cases. We have a lot of sources that help us with that. Some examples are a home study that helps the court understand what the adoptive home is like. We often usually will have a guardian ad litem who's investigated the case and made recommendations about what's in the child's best interest. And in many of the adoptions I preside over as a juvenile court judge, I've come to know the children and their family over a lengthy child welfare case, a child in need of assistance case. And so I've learned a lot from social workers, guardian ad litems, attorneys, parents about the child through the course of that case. And then when an adoption is of a child who's been in the department's custody, there are reports and recommendations from them that help me as well. So there's a lot of information that's provided to judges to help them assess the child's best interests.
And when we talk about like the whole process, a lengthy process of child in need of assistance, there's a kind of relationship. Probably, I'm guessing there's a relationship formed by judges themselves, the courts themselves, and the children themselves, right? So having the children go to adoptive parents, how do they evaluate like suitability of those adoptive parents?
Sometimes the folks who are petitioning to adopt are family members or foster parents where the child has lived with them for a long time. Our adoption statute says that the child has to have been in the home for at least 180 days. So we have a really nice sample size of time where the child's been in the home, had their needs met well, acclimatized to the home. And so you're able to see through reports and even sometimes firsthand in court hearings how the family get along.
And is that often that families, like courts, find adoptive parents really suitable for the kids? Or
Yes. Yes, very much so. We have really great in our child welfare cases. We have relatives who step up often to adopt. And so they have been a safe haven for the child during a turbulent kind of case. And at the close of the case, if our primary permanency goal, which is return to the parents, is not successful, then we can move forward for the family members to either be guardians or adopt the children through an adoption proceeding.
got it. And in your experience, what are the most common challenges faced by judges?
Judges have it easy compared to everybody else
Mhm.
with adoption proceedings. I mean, we do have to, review pleadings, make sure the right notices have been sent, make sure I have all the right information in front of me. And at the bottom of everything, right, is the critical question of, are the prospective parents ready to welcome this child into their family and help them navigate all the things that young people have to navigate in their childhood? Uh,
Hmm.
but the hard work on those things really comes from the adoptive parents themselves, the young people, the
Yes.
service providers who are helping them and supporting them in the process, the lawyers who help them prepare their case and prepare the petition and enter testimony and make sure I have the right exhibits in front of me. So I think actually the hardest work is done by the uh, everybody except the judge. The judge has to just review whether the right evidence is there and grant the petition if it is.
And thinking about the actual work done by the judge, how do you ensure that adoption are conducted ethically and lawfully?
Well, I think, one of the important things that judges do leading up to the adoption hearing is to review the file and make sure before the actual adoption hearing is set that all the right things are there. There's nothing that judges want to do less than come to an adoption hearing when everybody's ready to celebrate the entry of a child into a new family, uh, and then have to delay it, right?
Mhm.
Because there was something missing. And I've had that happen once in my career, and it was a really difficult conversation to have with the lawyers and the family. Now, we were able to get everything worked out and everything went fine. But, we do have an obligation to really make sure we do everything right in that process and ensure that adoptions happen with all the right notices, with all the right pleadings, with all the right evidence. And that's just an incredibly important part of the judge's job. And it's the way we ensure that the ultimate adoption order is legal and was come to in an ethical way.
So, just to think about the perspective of the children going through the adoption process, this is terrifying in some manner as well as a happy moment for them. So, could you tell me a little bit about their mindset of the children that came through your courtrooms? What are they going through?
Well, let's remember, first of all, that adoptions happen for children everywhere from, newborn age to 17, right?
Mhm.
And, so their perspectives on the case really change and vary depending on age and their kind of awareness of what's going on. One thing that sometimes surprises people is that for children 14 and over, they have to actually consent to adoption. So a child can't be adopted when they're 14, 15, 16, 17, unless they formally consent to it.
Hmm.
And usually by the time we get to an adoption hearing, those things have been addressed and children are thrilled to go through the process. The testimony that children give or statements that children make in those hearings is sometimes, in my view, the most powerful testimony or statements you ever hear in court. Um, Younger children are often nervous at first when they're in court. Court doesn't feel like a normal space for them to be in, but we take a lot of steps to try to make it more comfortable for them. I just did an adoption about a half hour ago, and there were two very young children, and they did not want to sit still for the entire proceeding. They were running around the courtroom. We have space in the courtroom where they can sit and color or read a book. We have some toys in the courtroom they can play with. And then, as part of the adoption proceeding, we have some donated, stuffed animals
Oh,
and books that kids can pick out as sort of something they can take home from the adoption proceeding. And so we do a lot of things to try to make young people feel comfortable in those proceedings. The other thing I like to do in adoption hearings is at the end, I always ask, what's the family doing today to celebrate the occasion? And often they're going out to eat, or they're going to have a picnic, or they're planning something, an open house for the weekend, something like that. But I always ask the young person what they want to do. And then I kind of jokingly order the
Mm.
parents to make sure that they do the thing the young person asked for.
Oh,
So,
that's
you just try to find ways to involve them in the proceeding and hear their perspective and make them feel comfortable participating. Um, you have to remember that, especially in cases that we handle or adoptions that we do in juvenile court that came out of a termination of parental rights in a child welfare case, that, for both the family members or foster parents who adopt and for the young people themselves, there
mm,
are aspects of adoption hearings that can kind of feel bittersweet, right? Because
mm,
the goal we had of returning the children to the parents' custody didn't come to fruition. And, you know, so there is an element for folks sometimes of sadness or
mm.
loss that goes along with the feelings of joy and excitement that come from being incorporated into a new family and having a new family relationship. And remember that often the people that do the adopting are relatives that the young person knows, a caring aunt or uncle, grandparent, uh, even sometimes an adult sibling. So oftentimes it's family members who are doing the adopting and are keeping the young person connected to their birth family.
And all of those adopting families, do they have any resources that the court provides to help them after they started the adoption?
Yes, there are many. I don't know if there are enough, but there are many. Four Oaks is one of the agencies that does licensing for adoption in our cases and for foster care licenses. And they have both licensing staff and support workers that help in the process. For our young people that are adopted out of child welfare cases, they have an HHS caseworker who's been with them along the way, helping and being supportive of the family, helping them find services when they need them. And then, I think we really have to celebrate that statewide, we've got a fantastic community of social workers and mental health workers that are not connected to
Mhm.
HHS or to the courts that step up to help families because years down the road, young people may have questions about what led to their adoption, may need to learn more or want to learn more about it in a way that can be guided by a clinician, a therapist, or social worker who can help. And so I think it's really important that adopted families don't feel uh, kind of that after the adoption's completed that everybody leaves, right? That
Yeah.
there are people around that can still help. And I'm always really happy when we have an adoption hearing like I did today, where there are a lot of family members, uh, a lot of folks from the church family of this particular family that come and speak out about the ways that they, as members of this family's community, want to keep helping and supporting the family as they bring two new people into it. One of the things we try to do in our child welfare cases is build connections with professionals in the community that will continue and exist well past the end of our case, right? So that, families who adopt can have the same therapist for a young person that maybe worked with them early in the child welfare case, or can have the same behavioral health worker or case manager from integrated health homes that can work with them well after our case is done, and keep supporting the family and helping them find the services they need to make things work.
And throughout all the process from beginning to being adopted and maybe beyond that, how does the court inform the children about what actually is happening, the formalities, and at least making it sense for the kids?
We have to use developmentally appropriate language, right? Because, like I said, sometimes, like today, I was talking to a 2-year-old, right? And then other days, talking with a 15 or 16-year-old about it. And so you have to really try to, when you talk with them and ask them questions, you have to really, kind of use language and use ideas that make sense for them in light of their ages, right?
Hmm.
And try to engage them. For a really young child, I might ask them to pick out a book and tell me about it. I might ask them to speak into the microphone so they can hear their voice amplified in the courtroom and kind of feel good about that. And then give them the choice to, maybe sit on the soon-to-be adoptive parent's lap during the hearing so that they kind of can be close to the person while the hearing takes place. So our interactions with young people in these proceedings are really different depending on age and maturity.
Hmm. That's really interesting. And this November is Adoption Month. Does this recognition help raise public awareness?
I hope it does. We have in November, we have one day dedicated solely to adoptions. This year, I believe it's November 20th. We have a wonderful judge, Rachel Seymour, who's putting that all together and organizing it so that we can complete a really large number of adoptions that day. And I hope it brings some attention to uh, the incredible kind of love and caring that family members, foster parents, other folks that are doing the adopting, have for these kids.
What would you like to say to family that might actually be thinking about adopting children and are nervous about going through the adoption process?
I think, the first and most important thing is to really learn more about it to determine if it is something that you're ready for and willing to do. Adoption's not for everyone. You've kind of implied that when you've talked about the work it takes to bring new people into your family. But there are so many children who need stable and loving homes. And if it is something that you're interested in, there are a lot of ways to learn about it. I think Four Oaks
Mhm.
has a really great program where they can do teaching and training and help with people who want to potentially adopt. They can help with home studies and licensing. There are really a lot of excellent adoption attorneys in our state who be happy, I think, to consult with families about what it entails and how it works, the challenges that come with it.
Mm.
I just told the family that had the adoption right before I came to talk to you that I think we recognize that our child welfare system can sometimes be hard for foster parents and family members of children as they go through the adoption process. It's such a lengthy process. There are lots of court hearings. There's long periods of time where things are kind of uncertain.
Mhm.
And we make it harder in some ways. And I think, our job is to help families that are interested in this learn about kind of the process and different ways you can get to an adoption hearing and help build in supports, whatever path they choose, that help them get to the right place.
The whole process of adoption definitely needs more recognition. It's not as recognized at other awareness days or
The good
awareness
news is
month.
that the court process itself is actually pretty straightforward and unintimidating. A typical adoption hearing is not a complicated hearing with a lot of stress. There are really moments to celebrate, and we try to make our courtrooms family friendly for those moments. And I just really enjoy one of the things that I enjoy about the hearings is that sometimes there are new siblings too, right?
Hmm.
So a family may be adopting that already has, say, two children already. And the two children are seated at council table with the parents who are about to adopt and are really welcoming in a new brother or a new sister. And today, during my hearing, one of the kind of new brothers or brothers to be um, helped pick up his new little sister and hold on to her while one of the parents was testifying and kind of distract her, so that she stopped crying. And it was just really fun to watch his kind of gentleness with her and kindness to her. So
Oh.
I think it's important to remember we're not just creating new parent-child relationships, we may be creating new sibling
Hmm.
relationships too.
Definitely. And in your opinion, just thinking about the changes throughout the years, have you seen significant improvements made in adoption process in recent years?
Well, one thing that I love that's recent is that we now can use Zoom
Hmm.
uh, as a way to involve family members from all over the country and sometimes all over the world. I've had
Wow.
adoption hearings where adoptive parents asked me to open up our Zoom link so somebody could join from Germany or California or Connecticut, right? And it's so neat for them to look up on a screen and see an important family member that maybe couldn't make the trip back for the adoption hearing, but can wave from the couch in their living room to the new family, can speak up and encourage them. That's been kind of a neat, the use of technology in those hearings has been kind of a neat change that we can do. And it's been really fun to watch families enjoy that attention from people who weren't able to make it to the hearing but wanted to be part of it.
Yeah, definitely. From the children's perspective, the family member being there to adopt, even though if they can't be physically, at least being in Zoom call to know that they are welcome to the family definitely
Yes.
makes a lot of sense. And are there stories that you could share from any of your adoption proceedings that's
I was
interesting?
thinking about that. I thought you might ask me about that. And so I thought of one that happened about a year and a half ago. Might be 2 years now. But it's one of my favorite ceremonies. Little girl was being adopted by a wonderful family, and the little girl invited her entire gymnastics team.
Oh,
And all the kids came and they wore their uniforms. I think some of them were in their uniforms. Uh, and they each came up to the microphone and said something nice about the young woman who was being adopted. And you could just see the young woman's face beaming as her whole gymnastics team each took a turn at the microphone. And at the end, they just surrounded her and did a little cheer in the middle
oh,
of the adoption hearing. And it was very touching. And it was so clear that, this little girl was not only being adopted by these wonderful parents, but was also being adopted in a way by her community and there to share in the sort of excitement and joy of that moment.
oh, that definitely makes a great story ending for our conversation. Well, thank you so much for sharing your stories and informing us about adoption in Iowa. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back next month with another informative topic. Until then, thank you for listening to In the Balance.